here as we've been taking the time out to just pause from our sheltered life. And what I've been doing over the last couple of weeks is I've been trying to get people who I think can either motivate, inspire, educate, or just help people who are trapped at home, who are battling many different things, just give them a little bit of a reprieve, a little bit of inspiration and motivation. And with that, I couldn't think of a more special guest, Yishai Fleisher, who I've known for over 20 years, and we've lost touch, in building our lives. But what Yishai has built over that time has been such a tremendous impact that he has had personally and to the community of Israel and to the different towns that he serves, especially in Hebron and so many other places where he lives. And with that, I wanted to thank Yishai for joining me, especially on this special, beautiful day of Yom Hatzmaot. Thank you so much. How are you, my friend Yishai?
Shmuel, thank you very much. And really, I appreciate being with you. And I appreciate that you're giving me the opportunity to speak with your community and to share Yom Hatzmaot, which is such a beautiful and important day for Am Yisrael, not just for the people of the state of Israel, but also for Am Yisrael in general. We're all part of an incredible Geula process. And so for me, it's a big zchut, and I mean that, to join you. I told my wife, like, tonight, I'm getting on Zoom and speaking to my brothers and sisters across the sea. And it's great to use this technology at this time. And you're absolutely right. The COVID-19 and the coronavirus, and it's really turned our lives upside down. But in other ways, we've had a chance to connect with one another maybe a little bit better. See, you and I lost touch. That's a good parable for how American Jewry and Israeli Jewry could easily lose touch. And so it's an honor to be with you today.
Thank you, Yishai. And speaking about losing touch, we met way back when we were both in our year. I mean, at least me. I don't know if at that point you were living in Israel. It was my year of Israel, between the gap year, as they call it, between high school and college. And I could just give you one little glimpse of a memory. I sent you the picture. And one day, Yishai, who was not in my school, but we had friends in common, he came to my school on a day off, and he says to me, we go on the balcony, and we had a beautiful villa in Har Nof at the end of the hill, at the end of the mountain. And Yishai looks outside on our balcony, and he points, and he said, Shmuel, look over there. Over there is Yad Vashem, the special museum and Holocaust place that Israel created for the victims and remembrance of Holocaust. He said, you want to hike there on the day off? And I said, do you know how to get there? Like, do you have a map? He's like, no, look, it's over there. And he just points. And with that, we embarked on a journey, a couple of people, and we just went through fields and farms and homes and I don't know what. And it took about 4 or 5 hours. I don't know what it was. And from that point in time, I knew this guy has grit. He has determination. He's aggressive, and he's willing to do things, unconventionally. You don't want to hitchhike. You don't want to go on a bus. You don't want to take a cab. Just to walk through and on hand and foot, just make our way there. And I knew right away, this guy is he's one with the land, and he's somebody who's completely, passionate about what he does and determined. And I would say, how did you get into what you're doing? You're just to give those people, and I know everybody knows about you, you're the international spokesperson of the Jewish community of Hebron. You are a broadcaster. You're a blogger. You write articles for famous publications. You're on TV. You're doing public speaking. You were here in New Jersey giving a speech. It was standing room only. So how does somebody, I guess, you went to law school. How did your life unfold, I guess, from when you started to get serious about, being a mature adult? Well, let's walk through that.
Shmuel, I wanna tell you something. It's a great story. I'm glad you remember that story, and it made me really feel like we'll look back there from 20 years ago. The real truth is that I've always been, and I think a lot of people watching this feel the same way. I've always been passionate about Eretz Yisrael. I think that's really where it comes from. And when you just say that easily, and you just say, I just love Eretz Yisrael, and on all of its levels, on all of its various levels. First and foremost, on a Torah and a Hashem level, and then on the land and the people, and on walking in the footsteps of our forefathers and mothers, and then also through the fight for Israel. And I think that all of us are formed in various ways. I myself was formed, I was born in a particular manner, and I was born to Russian refusnik parents. My parents were people who fought the Soviet Union, and a lot of the people watching in Teaneck remember the fight for Soviet Jewry. The fight for Soviet Jewry helped those Soviet Jews get out of prison. I was a child of one of those people who fought the KGB and made it to the land of Israel. I was also born on the very, very week, actually on the very day that the Air France plane was hijacked, later to be rescued at Entebbe. And so my first few days in this world were filled with those prayers of all the people around Israel who prayed for the release of those 103 passengers. And then the famous rescue and death of Yoni Netanyahu, and the rescue of that amazing story that, by the way, interestingly enough, just today I was sitting with my mother and we were just watching a show about Entebbe, and it was just like, wow, you know, you're taking 43 years back to that moment. And then later on, just growing up in Israel, actually with Arabs also as neighbors, and understanding them, their psychology, moving to America and always pining away to get back to Israel to serve in the army, which I had the merit to do in 1995. And then coming back to America, to Yeshiva University, and realizing that there's just not enough Eretz Yisrael consciousness. At the time, I was more fixated on Aliyah, and I still think Aliyah is a wonderful and beautiful thing, maybe the great dream of our people to be rejoined in the land. Today, I'm also very focused on Jewish rights in Judea and Samaria. I had the zchut in 2003 to get married at Ma'arat HaMachpelah, at the tomb of the patriarchs and matriarchs in Hebron. It was in the height of the Second Intifada. We came from America to get married. And that was a giant, unbelievable zchut, merit. And then since then, I've been given the opportunity to fight for what I'm passionate for, which many of us are passionate for on one level or another. And I think most of the people watching this program are passionate about Eretz Yisrael one way or another. And I'm always advocating for people to take one step towards Eretz Yisrael. If it's, you know, just buy a bottle of wine every Friday from Eretz Yisrael, maybe especially from Yehuda and Shomron, and drink Friday night wine. Make it a thing that Friday night we drink wine from Eretz Yisrael, and raise up that goblet and say, l'chaim to Eretz Yisrael. This is the wine that the prophets and the forefathers and mothers drank. And just to take that one extra step, especially now under Corona, where many of us in the United States are locked out, seemingly, find a way to sneak in. You know, it's like a Hasidic story. If the door is locked, you know, sneak in a window. Is there a step that we could take to just get a little bit closer? So that's basically what's driven me, and I've always felt that zchut. I think that the Torah is replete with it. Once you get that mindset, you start seeing it everywhere in the Torah. You start seeing it everywhere in our prayers, and all of us today are living in a moment where we're living the reincarnation, the rebirth, the re-embodiment of the Jewish people in the land and in the state of Israel. And that is a tremendous moment, especially given that we've just gone through a horrific Holocaust. And so all of us around the world, all Jews, are joined and can be joined even more in this great project of rebuilding the Third Jewish Commonwealth.
That's amazing. And obviously with that backdrop in terms of your family and when you were born and how you were born, and the beginning of your life and what shaped and molded you is something that is unique and a testament to your upbringing, and clearly that has refined and defined you as an individual, and you've accomplished so much. I mean, when did you realize you had this the vision and like I wouldn't even say the motivation, but the the character to be able to be that spokesperson? Like when did you, what was something unique maybe in your life that changed and said, I have to take action? And I would say that's a great, to me, we could sit here and we could all, you came out with a great a video that I was watching about the San Remo recognition and the documentary of it. Fascinating story. And to be able to take history and to be able to take facts and present it to people who otherwise don't know these things, you have to have a talent, you have to have a skill. And I would say, especially during this time of Corona, with all the uncertainty that people have, what is a good, message to tell people that you need to push through? And sometimes you may feel like uncertain about things and misdirection, or what motivates somebody like you to really be able to drive in a direction that other people are not willing to go?
All of us are born with certain innate talents. So when I was a Jewish kid watching sports in America like everybody else, I used to watch. Now today I don't watch sports. That's my caveat. I don't watch professional sports. But when I was a kid, I watched the Knicks and the Rangers and all the stuff that Jewish kids in New Jersey watch. And I used to think to myself, wow, those are amazing athletes. But that sportscaster, the broadcaster, Marv Albert, he's awesome. That's awesome. If I could grow up and be a broadcaster like him, that would be incredible. And I think that's a very
funny. That's great.
I think right. I used to be like, Marv Albert, God, look at the way he makes those calls. Look at the language that he uses. Never repetitive, never bang. He's so sharp. I used to be amazed by that. And I used to think about the production of the whole thing. And I was more impressed with his athletics than with the athletics of the athletes. And I knew at a young age that I was interested in some kind of broadcast and performance type stuff. But then through different things, through what I saw in the army, and I was injured in Lebanon as well by a roadside bomb. And then when I got to Yeshiva University, I started in English literature because I like books. But I found that English literature was just not calling to me. It was just kind of like reading great books. And Kadosh Baruch Hu sent me on to a different direction, which was political science. And when I hit political science, I was like, I love this thing. I am interested in this. I am interested in political science and political psychology, political history. And when you fuse that sociology, politics, when you fuse that with Zionism, this is where I want to be. Sends you on your path in so many ways. Like, why are you doing your broadcast right now? Something pulled you to that. Kodesh Baruch Hu sends us on our path. But for me, it was also a realization, and I have that realization every day, including today, and we can talk about that our enemies, the enemies of the Jewish people, have shifted tacks today away from physical warfare, away from tanks and jets, and more onto what I call the narrative warfare, the narrative war against Israel, which is really about Israel's reputation. It's a war of reputation. And they have lost in the battlefield, but they have shifted onto a tactic to besmirch our people, besmirch it in the eyes of students, in the eyes of allies, in the eyes of foreign politicians, even in the eyes of Israelis. They want to repaint Israel, not as a David that is bringing a light unto the nations, but as a Goliath who is repressing, occupying, stealing, apartheid. And these are words that I face every day, including today, which I faced many, many times today on Twitter from people around the world. Seeing Israel and not just seeing Israel, but describing Israel as an apartheid state, etc. And I realized that we are in a battle, a narrative war, narrative battle that has to be fought. And the Kodesh Baruch Hu many times gives us the medicine before the illness. There is a way today to fight back on social media, on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, maybe TikTok. I'm not there yet, but I'm moving towards that direction. And it's to tell the truth and to tell it passionately. And that's another thing. The many good folks that worked in the so-called Hasbara industry taught us a lot of, in my opinion, lame answers. I'll give you just one example. The most famous and the lamest answer of them all is, when they tell you that this land is occupied, you tell them it's not occupied, it's only disputed. Now that sounds smart, but it's the height of dumbness, because it is not an answer. When you're on campus and somebody says, "You've stolen the land," and you go, "Hey man, it's only disputed," that is not a passionate answer to the accusation, what I call the occupation accusation. And so we have to be out there both articulate, but also passionate, not just Talmudic, but knowing how to be aggressive and give our answer back, shut those haters down, just as they try to shut us down. And, you know, the Holocaust is not fresh in young people's minds. And the Six-Day War is not fresh in people's minds. And so therefore, what's fresh in people's minds is what's being seen on CNN, which is so-called occupation or apartheid and all these words that they throw at us. And so I realized that that is the one of the main things. You know, Rav Soloveitchik says, you know, if you want to know what the mitzvah of the generation is, look where the enemies of Israel are focused on. And I can see that the enemies of Israel are focused on this narrative war, and social media, etc. And so on top of that, on top of this understanding, Kadosh Baruch Hu gave me the zchut to be in a position to have a license to mouth off on Twitter, etc. To you know, Hashem has given me the so-called, you know, the position to have a right to say things. Although I think everybody's got a right to fight back for truth. So that's the story. And I only urge more people to get involved one way or another. And there's many little ways and big ways to get involved in the narrative war. First and foremost, of course, is to teach your children about the narrative war and make sure that they understand you will be lied to. You will be accused. And here's the answer. Right. First and foremost is like, teach your kids. That's like, inoculate them from the lies. But then, you know, there's other ways to broadcast it, and that's what I've been doing.
Right. You've really built yourself that platform to be able to address the narrative, as you're calling it. I think it's a great way to depict it in terms of just what we're battling against. And your platform is online, offline, public speaking, just interacting one-on-one. These documentaries and these blogs and these posts and the broadcasting that you do and the people that you interact with, you clearly see that you're not just mouthing off, as you say, which you do so well and eloquently, which is why you're so successful, but you're bringing in people with authority and with validity and of substance that are reaffirming what we believe and what we know to be true. And I agree with you. I think it's so important. And I would say, you know, as we're almost wrapping up here, what advice do you have? Let's say even you mentioned colleges and kids. What can they do? The regular, you know, the average Joe or the average Jew that's just walking around minding their own business. What advice do you have for them? They may be in a college or in an environment where they're indifferent and they don't realize that they may not have the platform that you've built for yourself, but they have the ability to just stand up for so many different things. What would you advise to even younger kids in college who have been so, I'd say, blurred and there's so much noise out there that they kind of ignore everything and they're afraid to take action?
There's a lot of questions there. I want to make a few points. First thing is that look what you're doing right now. You picked up the Zoom and you're like, okay, here's a platform. So there's a lot of platforms today. There's really a lot of, the platforms are all completely open. Like, one of the great miracles of our time is that media is no longer top down. We could all generate media. And that's something very special that we have to take a picture of. Beautiful arts about the story of Jewish people in Israel, and you've already broadcast the truth, and you've already done a good thing for that day. with regarding to young people, it saddens me sometimes. Left, young people on the left are things in politics, outrage, and the left, and young people who tend to be center left, a lot of times have this very natural sense of moral outrage. And when it comes to our rights, Jewish rights in the land of Israel and in Judea and Samaria, we have not done a great job at kind of expressing our moral outrage, our fight for justice, our indigenous rights, our historical rights, our legal rights. And we haven't given our young people license to be pissed off and to be like, hey, get your hands off my land. Like, this is my land. This is the truth. And so the whole Palestinian narrative has done a great job at being the victim, which on Twitter, a lot of times I'll say to them, you guys, when you guys are, when you're military strong and you're trying to destroy Israel, then you guys are the great victimizers. The minute that we're strong, you guys are amazing at playing the victim. And I think that the Jews, Israelis, pro-Israel folks, pro-Judea and Samaria folks need to feel need to be given license to feel that kind of passion. It's a feeling. By the way, it's a feeling that sometimes other people give me. I just interviewed a guy named David Horowitz from David Horowitz Freedom Center, not David Horowitz from the Times of Israel, David Horowitz Freedom Center. And listening to him, I'm like, dang, I am being a sissy. This guy is hot. Like, he is saying it. And I was just like, whoa, that's a totally different level. And I caught myself like being also kind of cowed by all kinds of PC thinking. And so, look, the first thing I would recommend to young people is to know a little bit more. The truth of the matter is it takes some time to know stuff. It really does. For me, I could tell you, I'm still reading. I'm still trying to understand. And I'm always reading Israeli history or Torah or whatever it is. And it grows. You grow with knowledge. So start the process of growing with knowledge. Don't be afraid of all the knowledge that's out there. Find some good books. Here's a book. Hold on one second. Here's a book that I just finished reading. I love this book. Oh, it's backwards on the screen. It's called the Elliot Yeager. Great book. I just loved it. Here's another book I'm reading right now called The Palestinian Delusion. Okay, by a very noted scholar, Robert Spencer. So yeah, it's a lifetime of learning. At the same time, don't let your lack of knowledge like lead you to totally be stifled by somebody else's what you feel are lies. I'll give you an example. When I was like 9 years old in New Jersey, I was playing basketball behind some church in my town, and a nice guy came up to me, and maybe he was from that church or maybe he wasn't, and he started asking me questions about the Bible. And he started insinuating that I should believe in why don't I believe in the Christian deity. And so at some point I said to him, look, I'm 9 years old. I don't know all these verses, but I know my truth. I know my truth, and I know what I believe. And that's also something that it's okay. I know it's ours. I don't know everything that you're throwing at me, but I know our truth. I know our narrative. So young people, the other thing I want to say is there's a fusion. Here's what I want to say. There's a fusion between Torah. I'm guessing that most of the people that are watching your program are Torah Jews, observant Jews. Is that correct or not?
Most.
Okay. Let's say, let's talk to those people. It's important to fuse Torah and history and certainly modern Israeli history. It's important to understand those things together. Here in Israel, it's a little bit easier because, for example, when I watch the news with the kids at night. So I'm teaching them Torah, but at night we also watch some news. They ask me questions, and I help them see the fusion between our ancient history from 3,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, the 2,000 years of exile, and today, and that fusion from the book of Nehemiah to what's happening today is incredibly important because it gives you the depth of our truth. The depth of our truth is that, yes, we're a startup nation. Yes, we fight bad guys. Not every Arab is a bad guy. And know the difference between good Arabs or friendly Arabs, decent Arabs, non-jihad Arabs. and haters. There's a depth there, that can be studied. I make my kids meet Arabs and talk to them and understand them on a visceral level, and understand that there's Kodesh Baruch Hu's truth. There was a Holocaust. There's a rebirth of the Jewish people in the land of Israel, and it all is part of a congruous story. And when you have that, you have a depth that isn't easy to undermine. If it's only like a frummy kind of depth, but it doesn't understand what actually happened in history, then they'll undermine you by throwing out all kinds of facts that you won't understand how to answer. And if you are totally based in modern secular history and don't understand that there is also here a promise, a forefathers and mothers, two commonwealths that stood here with two temples. The heart of it was two temples in Jerusalem. If you don't understand the linkage between that and what we're doing today, then you'll go into the whole like world of like, somebody will say, okay, you have in Israel, but it's an apartheid state. You'll be like, yeah, oh yeah. You won't understand that we have Torah rights, historical rights, legal rights, and they all fuse together. So that's my little point, which is, I guess it's not a little point at all. It's a big point.
It's a great
Teach
point.
the fusion of these things.
It's a great point. And
I guess let me finish with one tiny Torah thought. It says V'shinantam levanecha. Here's my pshat. V'shinantam, show them your teeth when you're teaching people Torah. Show them the smile. Show them that it's beautiful. That together it's a beautiful mosaic, a beautiful history, a beautiful truth, a complex truth. But what a joy. And I think that my kids today really felt that we as a family celebrated this day. It wasn't just a barbecue. It was one of the most meaningful days on the Jewish calendar.
It is great. And with that, I'm going to leave one last takeaway as we are on this special day of Yom Hatzmaot. Is there any one particular, obviously people are celebrating it significantly different than ever in the 72-year history of it. Is there any one year in particular that just sticks out in your mind as like, wow, that was something truly amazing happened? Or is this year perhaps just in the fact that people are just able to celebrate it independently also of significance? I guess they both are.
This year, I particularly recall there's so many great years in Jewish history, and many great things happened. Last year, we had the recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel by the United States of America. That was a beautiful moment, and I think we'll bring more and more of the nations around the world to recognize that simple fact. But I think today, 72 years since Israel's birth, I go back all the way 100 years ago to 1920, April 25th, 1920, when the Allied powers that defeated amongst our enemies, the Ottoman Empire, and then sat down to carve up the Ottoman Empire. And a great push was made by Jews and non-Jews for the British mandate, which was going to recognize under international law the rights of the Jewish people in the land of Israel and their efforts to reconstitute a commonwealth there. And the nations got together in San Remo, and later on it was ratified by 56 members unanimously at the League of Nations. And this was the beginnings of recognition, international law recognition by the nations of the story of Israel. On the one hand, we don't need anybody's recognition. We fight for our self-determination. On the other hand, there was a beautiful moment when the world saw the truth, which is that this people that had been exiled from this land were destined to return, and they had British interests, but they also had the interest of fulfilling the promise of the Bible, because many of them, like Balfour and like Lloyd George, were great lovers of the Bible, and they also wanted to right the wrongs of Christendom against the Jewish people, and they went towards this kind of recognition. So for me, that's a very salient moment. Again, God gave us this land. We fought for this land. We bought this land. We did a lot to get it. I have actually a different lecture. People like Nahum Sokolow, people like Jabotinsky, and others. to secure international recognition of Jewish rights in the land of Israel. And so that's a special moment in the story of the rebirth of Israel for me.
Right. Yeah. And again, just to plug the fact that your recent documentary celebrating that 100-year, that video was amazing, and the way you brought in the right people and just how you told the story was truly, for me, a great learning experience, and brought a lot of new ammunition for me, as they say. And with that, I know it's late in the evening over there in Israel. You had a very long day, and you've been nonstop, doing these things with so many other people, and also trying to take the time to actually celebrate. And with that, I want to thank you so much, Yishai. You're a tremendous advocate and spokesperson and person that's doing amazing things, and we should all continue to be inspired by you, motivated by you, and do our part to try to emulate and do whatever we can to protect, preserve, and power through and stand up for what we believe in. Thank you, Yishai.
Amen. Shmuel, keep up the great work, and yesher koach to you for this initiative. And I want to wish everybody really a big blessing. Lots of blessings from the land of blessings to all of you. We're all holding hands across the Atlantic. We're part of a great story, and I just want to send a lot of love to our brothers and sisters across the sea, and we miss you here. We hope to see you here very soon. B'ezrat Hashem.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Yishai. Have a great night, and happy Israeli Independence Day. Be well.
Toda rabba. Toda rabba. Laila tov.